Hey, welcome back. Cleve here from the Rent a Chair Academy and the Salon system. And in this tutorial, we're going to go through the relationship and the language in the Hairdressing Award and discover how does this Rent a Chair model comply with the Hairdressing Award and Industrial Relations in each state of Australia. Now, there are three more prominent Industrial Relations Commission's Hairdressing Awards that sort of directly state that you can't do this, and that is West Australia, South Australia and Queensland. Now, I'll explain how this shift from employer to employee works, because it basically takes you out of employer-employee into tenant and landlord. But listen up a bit later on that one. But let's sort of go through the West Australian one, for instance, and that has a clause. It's clause 11. And that clause 11 says wages, subclause 5, ban on subcontracting. And it states no employer shall rent any portion of the salon to an employee or employ an employee in the hairdressing trade on a commission-only basis or in any matter other than prescribed in this award. So that's West Australia. If you're in South Australia, it's pretty simple. 10.1.2. Renting of chairs is hereby prohibited. Period. Then in Queensland, if you're all the way up there in Queensland, that's also pretty simple. 10.1, chair renting prohibited. The renting of chairs in hairdressing salons is prohibited. Period. Full stop. That was like 2 full stops then, or 2 periods. Anyway. Let's use the West Australian Hairdressing Industrial Relations interpretation of the award as an example, and I'll break this down. So stay with me a little bit here, because this is important for you to understand what it is that you're applying for and how this private tax ruling that you're going to apply for helps you here. So, Clause 11, wages, subclause 5, ban on subcontracting. Once again, no employer shall rent any portion of the salon to an employee or employ any employee on the hairdressing trade, in the hairdressing trade that is, on a commission-only basis or in any manner other than prescribed in this award. Full stop. So, the first part says, no employer shall rent any portion of the salon to an employee. The second part says, or employ any employee to the hairdressing, the second part says, to employ any employee in the hairdressing trade on a commission-only basis. And the third part states, or in any manner other than prescribed in this award. So if you break it down in those 3 parts, it's easy to understand. So what does this mean? The first part, subclause 5, ban on subcontracting. Well, here's the Australian Tax Office's definition of a subcontractor. A subcontractor is a contractor who enters into a contract with another person. As in an employee-employer relationship, subcontractor requires a contractor. Now, the redundancy here with this system is, as you are the landlord and you are not collecting the money for the services or paying someone to conduct the service, there's no contractor and or subcontractor agreement implied or otherwise. Now, let's look at that second part. And it said number 2, the second part was, no employer shall rent any portion of the salon to an employee. 2 issues need to be established here. A, are you an employer by definition? And B, the interpretation of the term employee. So let's look at this. Section 7 of the West Australian Industrial Relations Act 1979 states that the term employer includes a person, firm, company or corporation, and the Crown and any minister of the Crown or any public authority. Well, no salon sort of complies with the Crown, so that's Section B's whole pile of rubbish. I'll spare you the blurb there. But the redundancy here is, either way, the employer clause also becomes redundant as this micro-salon system switches out the employer-employee to the relationship that of a landlord-tenant. Okay, so that's kind of out of there. Now let's look at that third part, and it says, or employ any employee in the hairdressing trade on a commission-only basis. Now, The redundancy here is this too becomes redundant because the micro-selling system switches out the employer-employee relationship with that of landlord-tenant. I'm going to keep saying that because that's actually what's happening. So the last one is or in a manner other than prescribed in this award. Now this just reiterates everything I've been talking to you about, so I don't think I need to go through that again, but let me just drive this home for you just one last time. If you've applied for and been approved or granted the Australian private tax ruling set out in the system, which you're about to go and do, you'll be deemed and governed a landlord and or a sublessor. So as a landlord, you're no longer governed by the Hairdressing Award because your current landlord is not governed by that, right? Because you're just paying rent for something, and you're now just going to go and have a sublease with somebody else and have them pay you rent. So basically the employer-employee situation is no longer valid. So you're now both governed by whatever the real estate faculties or governing bodies would come into play. That's actually what you now become governed by. And I have no clue what they are, but that's up to you now and to go and find out. So let me finish with the South Australian one. 10.1.2, renting of chairs is prohibited. Well, this is once again a clause inside the award of which becomes redundant. And in the Queensland situation, 10.1, chair renting prohibited, I think is what it says. The renting of chairs is hairdressing salons is prohibited, full stop. This too is a clause inside the award and of which becomes something that is outside of your jurisdiction as a landlord. Okay, so just to wrap this up, I hope that helps, and by all means, this next part that we're going to go into, if for some unknown reason you still need some proof, I'm going to go through my one or two of the letters that I have, or correspondence letters that I have from the Industrial Relations Commission and also the Australian Tax Office. I might share that with you as well. But we'll go through that and show you how to basically apply for your, or what you need to know to apply for this specific for your tax private ruling. So in the unlikely event you're still sitting on the fence, jump into the next tutorial and I'll take you through the Industrial Relations Department's letters to me that have said that this is a thumbs up. All right, we'll see you there.